Hi guys, today I want to talk to you about stocking your gluten-free pantry if you have one, and stocking your pantry in general if you don't have to have a gluten-free pantry like I do. My name is Tina and welcome to my channel. I'm so glad you're here. Today I'm talking about the pantry because I haven't done that in a while and I thought maybe it's time to update and give you a few more tips on how to start a gluten-free prepper pantry. Now, full disclosure, I don't really consider myself a prepper. I'm just getting into this. I've been doing it for about 2 years. I've been stocking my pantry. It's taking me a bit of time because number one, I don't have a lot of funds. Number two, I have 8 kids who like to eat. 5 of those are boys, so it's hard to stock a pantry. So I know what it's like to have to do it on a budget. And so I'm going to give you my best tips to get you started today. I know there's a lot going on in the world. I know everybody's talking about it. There's a lot, it's in the news all the time. I'm not a fear person. I'm a practical person. In case you've never been here before or met me on my channel, I just want you to know that I'm not coming from, oh my gosh, doomsday is around the corner and we got to be prepared for, the zombie apocalypse or anything like that. I am just a mom of 8. I've got lots of kids. I see the cost of food going up. I see the inflation. And the reason we started was because at the beginning of the pandemic, there were limits put on certain foods, and those foods were really important to our family. The number one being eggs. I've talked about in other videos, so if you haven't seen any of my other videos, check those out after this one. So let's get to it. So the reason I wanted to talk about this today is because it's been on my heart, and I just want to give you some really quick tips on how to store food, what to get, and how to do it on a budget. In 2013, we were living in the city and there was a major flood which knocked out the transformer that brought power to our home. We weren't affected by the flood, but we had no power for 3 whole days. So this is one of those scenarios where I think it's really important to have a stock pantry. First thing I would stock is water. You're going to need water no matter what. In the case of a power out, we would be without water unless we have a generator to run the water pump that pumps the water from the well into our pipes up here. So we would be stuck. So it's always good to have lots of water on hand. The second thing I would get is something else to drink. This is really inexpensive juice from Walmart. They're 99 cents a carton, just a couple extra, because when you do drink a lot of water, you can wash away the electrolytes and you can actually become dehydrated. So it's always good to have other things to drink on hand. And to that, if you're a coffee drinker like we are, have extra coffee. Now, one of the things that I have found that saves us a lot of money on coffee is we buy it on sale or we buy it on subscription through Amazon. So we get an extra, I think it's 15% off when we use our Amazon Prime. Another good thing to have is either powdered milk if you can drink dairy. I cannot, and we do not have a cow or a goat here on the homestead, so we rely on store-bought milk. Now, most of us, I myself cannot drink dairy, so I have almond milk, but you can also get oat milk or hemp milk, whatever it is that you can drink. And you can also get powdered milk, as well as we have some carnation milk downstairs, the evaporated milk, to put in things. Some other things that I want to emphasize are really important to have and are really inexpensive is some lard, because it is shelf stable. I know most people have butter in the freezer, which is great, but if the power does go out, then you're kind of stuck there unless you have a generator, which is also a really good idea. But we're talking budget here. Lard is an inexpensive fat to fry food if you need to. Another really important thing to have, you don't need to get them in big containers, but we like to buy them in bulk, in big containers. I know in the US you can get the really big bags of, I think it's Redmond salt, and we just get this salt from Costco. It's really good. It's sea salt, and it's really good for all kinds of different things, from canning to just seasoning a meal. You can stock up on really inexpensive spices. You're going to need these to spice things. Let's say in an SHTS situation, you think, okay, I've got my beans and I've got my rice. You're going to need something to season that because that's going to get awfully boring. So I like to have, this is just one of many. I have extra because I don't want to eat flavorless food. Honey, it lasts virtually forever. I like to buy it either at Costco or in bulk from a farmer. I get the 7-kilo buckets and then I just put it in a smaller mason jar so it's easier to use. Or when they're on sale at Costco, I like to buy those. They're good for sweetening a lot of things. They're good as medicine as well. You can use them with different herbs. For example, you can make a tea with oregano and some honey if you had a cold, and that would help relieve the mucus and all that stuff. I'm not giving medical advice. I'm just saying that's one way you could use honey. Vinegar is a good thing to have around because you can use it to disinfect things, as well as you can cook with it and pickle things with it. So I like to have lots of vinegar on hand, especially for canning season. I mentioned that we're gluten-free, so I have some things back here. So I have things like tapioca starch, almond flour, and some buckwheat flour. Now, I store these in the packages as they are, but I put them in a big tote in my basement, and I just keep them in there on the ground, but they're not touching the ground. So that keeps them pest-free. I don't have any mice problems or bug problems. Knock on wood, these will keep. I don't keep a whole lot of almond flour just because it can go rancid. You can keep this in the freezer so that it keeps extra long, but I have a really cool cold storage room, so that's where I keep mine. Buckwheat flour is very versatile, so I like to have that. But store any type of flour that you use to bake. These are the 3 that I use the most of. You can make rice flour out of rice by grinding it in the food processor, or you can have rice flour if that's your jam. We don't do a lot of rice flour because I have a couple kids who can't do any grains, so I try to keep it grain-free. If you have lots of tapioca starch on hand, keep lots of baking soda on hand. Baking soda is versatile for cleaning, for doing all kinds of things like deodorizing. There's like 1,000,001 uses. You just have to Google it. But what I like to do is I keep lots of baking soda and tapioca starch on hand. And this other thing here is cream of tartar. The reason I buy cream of tartar, baking soda and tapioca starch, is to make my own baking powder. Baking powder will keep for a while, but it will not keep indefinitely. But these 3 items on their own keep for a really long time, and when you mix them together you get baking powder, and it is a great leavening agent. Its potency dissipates over time, so I just make this up every once in a while and keep it in a Tupperware in my cupboard. 1 part baking soda to 2 parts cream of tartar and tapioca starch. So the cream of tartar is a 100-gram bag, so I take 100 grams of this, 100 grams of this, and 50 grams of baking soda, and then I'd have a batch of baking powder that I can use to bake. Another thing I like to have on hand, even though I do a lot of canning, I like to have some canned fruit, some canned beans, some canned meat, and some canned tomato sauce. These things are versatile. You can use the canned meat to make, different kinds of casseroles, or put them in quiche. We put them in salads, that kind of thing, like a chicken salad or a turkey salad or a tuna salad, depending on what it is. And the crushed tomatoes, they're really good. You can make soup out of this. I have a recipe where it is mostly just canned tomatoes. It's super cheap. And these are all relatively inexpensive, especially if you buy meat in bigger packages, they'll come shrink wrapped together. And I always watch for sales for the canned fruit. You can also buy canned fruit at the dollar store, and it doesn't have any gluten in it. Peanut butter or other nut butters are a great thing to have on hand. They're a good source of protein. They keep for a really long time. I like to label my lids with the date, the best buy date is on the bottom here in really small print. I like to write them on top so that we're always using, and the kids can see, oh, okay, this one is March 2023. We'll use that one before we use the May 2023 one, for example. I make a lot of our canned soup because we have a lot of different food allergies and sensitivities. But I did find this on sale. These were $1.50 at Walmart about a month ago. So I picked up a few of these. They look like they'll be safe for most of the family. It says they're gluten-free. The only questionable ingredients are the organic flavor, the caramel color, and the natural flavor. They could be derived from grains, and that's why I hesitate to use this, but in a pinch, it would be great for making soup, as long as certain kids just won't consume it. When I said I would give you some tips on how to stock your pantry, I'm sorry, I'm super short. Some of the tips I have is, so if I was gonna buy one of these, it's on sale, then I would probably buy 2 or 3. If you're just starting, don't break the bank. Like when I first started, I mentioned in a recent video that we took $1,000 and we went and stocked the pantry to give it a good push, because we had that money on the account, we had saved it up, and we decided that's what we were going to do. You don't have to do that. Since then, I've just bought, instead of 1, 2. If I know we're gonna use one of these a week, I'll buy 2. If they're on sale, I'll buy 3, I might buy 4, I might buy 6, depending on how my budget is that week. So that is how I've been able to increase what we have in the pantry. You're going to want to have some staples on hand. Like, even though we're gluten-free and not everyone can eat rice, we do have rice here in our house because some of us can eat rice. So rice is a really good staple to have. Now, I leave them in these plastic bags for a while. We usually go through them pretty quickly, but I also do have a bucket like this. This one has sugar in it. So I mentioned the honey. I would also have a good stock of sugar, and sugar goes on sale quite often, so I like to pick up a bit of that extra. I have in here the Costco cane sugar, but I haven't been able to get that the last 3 times I've gone to Costco, and I only go every 6 weeks. So I've been buying a bit of white sugar as well. And I put my rice and things like sugar and oats and some of my main grains in a bucket. This is a food grade 5-gallon bucket, and I put a gamma lid on it. It makes it easier for us. And then I just put a scoop in there so that it makes it easier to fill up a jar or a bucket. Or when I'm canning, I'll just take a bowl downstairs, and if I need 5 cups of sugar, then and a measuring cup, and I'll just measure up 5 cups and then not drag that upstairs because it is quite heavy. But this is a really good way to store food. The other thing I like to use is cat litter buckets. I have a whole kitty litter bucket full of tiger nut flour, so I just like to have that, again, off the ground and in its own bin. Now, if you have kids, you're gonna wanna have like snack foods or cereal. They won't keep forever. Like, our basement isn't super damp, but I have a dehumidifier in my pantry. So all of these things are all in plastic bags, but I do have all of these stored in a bucket like this with a gamma lid on top. And I try to rotate through the things that are in cardboard so they don't go bad. But you could technically take out the insides of this, put it in a gallon jar or half-gallon jar, and then vacuum seal it. There are attachments you can get for the vacuum sealer so that you can do that, or you put it in a mason jar with an oxygen absorber. That would work as well, and that just will keep it fresh longer and not get stale. And if you are having a lot of soup on the pantry shelf, you might want to stock up on some crackers. I have a couple kinds here that in my pantry that are gluten-free or grain. These ones aren't grain-free, but the other ones I have are grain-free, so most everybody can have them. And I get these big boxes at Costco. Again, if I were to store a lot of these, we don't eat them very often, but if I were to store a lot of these, you can take them out of the bags and then vacuum seal them. They will last, I think, about 6 months longer than what they would in here. Don't quote me on that because I haven't tried it. I just don't have enough jars to start vacuum sealing all of the things I have in cardboard. And we generally don't eat a lot of crackers. So I like to have a bit of crackers and cookies and snack foods. And popcorn. That's another one. Some of my kids can't have popcorn, but it's a really inexpensive treat and it is somewhat filling. And if you're really in a pinch, you can start canning your own food. I canned these potatoes here, in this case here, 2 days ago, and I just got around to cleaning them up and putting them back in the case to take downstairs to the pantry. This and a cup, there were 2 extra jars, was from a 20-pound bag of potatoes for $8. And this is for several meals. This can also be thrown quickly into a soup, can be easily warmed up on a fire or in the microwave, depending on the situation. If we have, power out, we can still eat and everybody will be happy, because you don't want to be, around a whole bunch of hungry people. I can't imagine. That happens every day. Around a bunch of hungry people right before dinner, and then once everybody's fed, it's all good. So I I just don't like to see people hungry. And I just wanted to mention too, a lot of these things like gluten-free pasta can be expensive, but you can sometimes find gluten-free pasta for really inexpensive at the dollar store. I did a video about whether or not I could find some preps at the dollar store because I wasn't sure if we could find anything there, because I've always seen, you know, packaged foods and processed foods, and I didn't think I'd find anything. I actually found quite a few things. So pasta is one thing you can get there. Beans is another thing that you can often find, and sometimes you can find meat and beans and peanut butter and those kinds of things at the dollar store. I just picked up some sugar the other day. It was icing sugar. Now I don't use a lot of it, but I picked some at the dollar store. It was $2 for a 2-pound bag of icing sugar, and it had no grains in it. They used tapioca starch. Most icing sugar has cornstarch in it. We have corn issues, so we avoid corn, and we've avoided corn for a really long time, and the only kind of icing sugar that I could find to make like icing on a cake was stuff with cornstarch in it, or the alternative was organic, and it cost I think $7 per pound. So I was really happy to find a $2 bag of sugar at the dollar store that was grain-free. So there's that too. In order to can potatoes safely, you should pressure can them. Now I'm gonna say back in the day, people canned them in the water bath, and they just canned them for a really, really long time. I haven't tried it. I don't know if it's safe or not, but it's your kitchen, your rules. I would just look into it and see if that's something that you might be interested in doing. If you are going to can, you are going to want to pick up a few things. I've been making lots of jams with things that I find on the property. I will be making some rhubarb jam in my next video, 2 different ways. I'm going to be making some barbecue sauce as well using rhubarb. So you're going to need to have lids. First you're going to need jars, but then after that you're going to need replacement lids, and you're going to need things like pectin, pickling salt, and those sorts of things if you're going to can stuff. Now, let's say your garden isn't doing very well, or you didn't put one in. Don't worry about it. There are lots of places where you can get vegetables to can for really inexpensively. Check out markets where the restaurants go to get their bulk items. There are sometimes discount grocery stores that sell in bulk, so you have to buy then the 40-pound box of apples, or you have to buy, you know, 40 cucumbers to get the price. But it's really worth looking at. We've done that. I got a couple videos where we did those massive canning hauls. We bought a whole bunch of vegetables. The first time we went, I think we spent $40 or $45, and we canned coleslaw. We had cabbages that were like huge. So we canned coleslaw, we made pickles, we pickled carrots. I think we got it was a 50-pound bag of carrots. And don't be afraid of going to some of these places. Like some of the carrots we got were oversized, so they can't sell them at the grocery store because they have to be a certain size in order to sell at the grocery store. But these discount stores are a great way to get a hold of a lot of vegetables for really cheap, and you can feed a lot of people on a very little budget. Another great place to look for stuff is CSAs. There are some farms around here that's community supported agriculture, and there's one in particular who has Uglies Day, and I think it's Wednesdays actually, and you can go and get a 5-gallon bucket, like a bucket this size, full of ugly vegetables, like ones that aren't pretty enough to sell in their farm store or in their weekly groceries. If you were in Canada, I think it's in the Loblaw stores. I don't know if it's in all of them. They have it at a couple of the No Frills in the neighboring towns. So there's one about half an hour that way and one about 20 minutes that way. It's called Flash Food. It's an app, and you can usually get really inexpensive vegetables, sometimes packaged food, sometimes canned stuff. It all depends. We've gotten a few times like they'll have a box of vegetables for $5. That's another great way to stock up on vegetables. Now, if you don't have a canner or you don't have a lot of experience, my husband's like, make sure you tell them to borrow or go in together with a friend to buy one. You can get pressure canners now, but they're a bit more expensive. So if you don't have the means, maybe go in together with a friend, your mom or your sister, cousin, and then get together and can some stuff. Because if you can find inexpensive vegetables or you're growing your own, you're gonna be able to feed a lot of people. And it's not that scary. I remember the first time I used it, it was a little bit scary, but once you get used to knowing what to look for, it's not that bad. I'll do a video on how to use your pressure canner. I might do a video on how to pressure can potatoes if that's something you guys are interested in, because it's something I've done a bunch of times now, and it's super easy and it's not hard to do. But you can a lot of vegetables, but you have to pickle them if you just have a water bath canner. There's one last thing I wanted to mention before signing off here that's important when you first start prepping. Now, you may be thinking, oh, I just need to get, some bags of stuff, some jars and whatnot, and I just put it in the pantry, and I'll just put it there if I need it. And that's all great. When it's said and done, you have food there, and that's one really, really good. But if you want to maybe learn how to grow some of your own food, or you want to learn how to preserve some of the food, I always recommend getting a few books. Now, I have just a small stack here. I have a huge stack elsewhere. You're going to want to have knowledge. If all else fails, knowing how to preserve some food, knowing where to put things. Most of this can be just put on the shelf the way it is, and it will keep for a really long time. You're going to want to protect your investment. You're going to want to package things properly. A vacuum sealer is a great idea if you're going to start prepping. Dehydrator and a canning pot is a really good idea. This is a pressure canner, water bath canner. I use this for both, unless I'm canning both on the same day, then I'll pull out the other one. I know that was a lot. It was a big mouthful for me to get through all the different things. I just want to make sure that you start, if you haven't already. It just starts with getting one extra of this, one extra of that, and it doesn't cost that much. And if it is, stretching the bank, then maybe it's time to ditch the Starbucks, or it's time to ditch the Netflix. And if you've already ditched those, maybe it's time to check sales. And if you don't have a lot of room, cans like this you can put under the bed, or in a closet, in a cardboard box. There isn't a said rule that you have to have a cold storage, or you have to have a special pantry, and you have to have all the fancy matching buckets, because I don't. Like, my lids don't match my buckets. I don't have matching everything. It's not practical, and right now it's more important that you get a bit of food stocked up, get what you can. Like I said, just, pick up an extra, box of pectin or two. Lids I've found at the dollar store, and they're the same brand, but they're half the price they are anywhere else. So that's another good place to look. So you're gonna wanna stock up on a few of those things. I just wanted to get you started. Get started with salt, water, some fat, something to sweeten, something to pickle, and then the things that you like. Just buy the things you know you're gonna eat. And even if, in a couple months, everything turns around, the prices drop, and everything is in abundance again, you'll have peace of mind that there's some food there. You can just hey, I'm not going grocery shopping for a week or two, and you can live off what's there. If the power goes out, you're good. All of these things are not gonna go to waste. Now is the time to start if you haven't already. You haven't missed the boat. There's still food out there. There's still deals to be had. You don't wanna go hungry. That's the thing, you don't wanna go hungry. You don't want your kids to go hungry. So don't wait. Don't wait any longer. Let's get started. Even if you have food allergies, especially if you have food allergies. If you're celiac like me, get started now, because you know that you can't just eat whatever comes your way, or your child, if your child's celiac. They can't eat just whatever comes, whatever maybe you can barter with the neighbor. If they have something and it has gluten in it, tough luck, your kid doesn't get anything to eat. I don't want to be fear-mongering or anything like that. I just think it's time to get started, and especially if you have food allergies, get the foods that you know are safe so you can avoid cross-contamination. Look at doing lots of vegetables, and most canning recipes don't have gluten in them anyway. You can can chicken pot pie filling, and then you add a bit of tapioca starch later to thicken it up. You can do these things. I know you can. So I'm gonna wrap up this video now, because I've got to get this all cleaned out. It's time to get supper going, and tomorrow I'm going to be canning rhubarb 3 different ways and getting as much in the pantry as I possibly can. So I really hope you'll come back and check that out. Thank you for watching today's video. We'll see you in the next one. Bye. While I was putting things away, I saw something that reminded me to tell you that sometimes it's really easy to stock up on things. I dehydrated these bananas here. they were kind of on their way out and the kids weren't really eating them anymore. And before they went totally mush, banana bread material, I put them in the dehydrator and then I vacuum sealed them in this jar here. So this is another way you can build up stuff in your pantry by using things that are almost bad. You can do that with, you know, mangoes, apples, bananas, anything like that. If it's kind of starting to go or nobody's eating it. Herbs are another thing. If you bought, you know, a bunch of cilantro and you thought, oh, I'm gonna make a whole bunch of guacamole, and then the avocados weren't ripe or whatever it is, you know what I mean? And then before it goes bad, throw it in the dehydrator, and then you can put it in a jar, vacuum seal it, and that's another way to stock up on things. And if you don't have a dehydrator, you can put cilantro or things like that, you can put them in the freezer. Chop them up. You can freeze them in ice cube trays, or you can freeze them in small Ziploc bags, and you don't have to waste. And that's another great way to stock the pantry for almost free.